Hi, and welcome to this video on dependency injection in C#. In this video, we will be taking a look at what dependency injection is and how it can be used in a C# application. Dependency injection is a design pattern which is used to achieve loosely coupled software components. In really simple terms, dependency injection separates the concern of creating an object from the using of it. It is a form of inversion of control, which you have probably heard of previously in terms of the solid principles. Okay, so you might be asking yourself, why should I care about dependency injection? How can it help me? So by using dependency injection, we will get more extensible code. It will be easier to extend it by injecting another service. It will be easier to test our code. I will show you this later on in the tutorial. And then it will also be very easy to reuse our code. But by the nature of using dependency injection, we will program the code in a manner that actually encourages reusing code. In the following demonstration, I'll be showing you 3 different parts. First, I will be showing you how to add dependency injection into a console application. I will then show you how to set up groups of services in a project and how to easily configure the services under the dependency injection software pattern. Finally, I'll show you how to handle multiple implementations of one interface. Okay, so I'm just going to start out with creating a new project. Let's have it load. Okay, so we're just going to create a console application because we don't really want anything predefined, just such that you can follow all the steps and get an understanding of what we're doing. So let's just call this one dependency injection sample. Great. We're just going to go ahead with .NET 7. It doesn't really matter right now. Okay, so it just the application, and as you see, there's not really anything inside the application itself. There's just one file called program.cs that contains a write line with hello world. So let's just run this, build this small app to see if it actually prints the hello world statement within the console. And that happens. So it just appeared on my screen, but it basically just writes hello world, and that's basically what we expect. It doesn't really do anything interesting yet. Okay, so our first step is basically that we're going to create a folder that contains all our scripts for this project. Sorry, not scripts, I meant services. So I'm just going to call this services. And then I'm going to create a new class from template. I'm just going to call it robot service. Let's just do that. Okay, so my robot service, what it needs to do is basically have a dependency on another service that's a sensor, and then it should basically read a sensor value from that sensor. But before we can really continue with this, I'm gonna create another project that contains the sensors. So I'm just gonna click new project. For this one, I'm gonna choose a class library. Next, I'm gonna call it dependency injection sample.sensors. Okay, so it just creates in a basically empty file. It's just a simple class. I'm just going to delete this one for now. And then I'm going to create a new folder. It's basically the same. So I'm going to call it let's just call this one sensors, actually. And then within this folder, I'm going to add a folder called contracts. And basically what I want to have within this folder called contracts is all the interfaces. And an interface in C# is basically a contract between for a class. So it needs to implement all the definitions that have been made within an interface. And by doing that, all the other classes that depends on those implementations basically know what it can get out of it. That makes sense. So there's nothing, no implementation details within the interface, but it's just going to be define some methods that it needs to implement. So let's just start out with having a string that's going to be name and just going to be a get. Basically, it can only get this string, but you won't really be able to change it from outside the class. Then we're going to have a function that returns a double. As you just call it, let's call it read sensor value for now. And that's probably the only two functions that we need, at least for this example. So I'm going to create my first class. I'm going to call this one an accelerometer. Basically, I want to tell that it implements the iSensor interface that I just created. So now it says that, okay, there's something wrong. And what's that? So it just states that it doesn't implement the name property and it does not implement the read sensor value method. And that's actually something that we need to do now. So it needs to implement all the elements that are defined in the interface. So I have resharper, and I can just have resharper help me implement the missing methods. I'm going to have, okay, I want the property and I also want the function. Let's just have them. So I'll just at least have them implemented, but let's just make it into something meaningful. So let's just call the name accelerometer, and we're only going to use this name to validate our results later on. And normally you will probably have either a service that implements with, communicates with some hardware or something like that. But I'm just going to say, okay, I'm going to return 2. That's it. So every time I read a value from an accelerometer, I'm going to get 2. That doesn't really make sense, but just for the purpose of this tutorial, it's going to be fine. I'm going to add another service, and let's just call this a gyroscope. So, and a gyroscope is quite similar to an accelerometer. However, instead of measuring acceleration along an axis, it measures the angular velocity, which is the velocity of rotation around an axis. So once again, iSense interface. Let us have resharper just implement the methods. Just because I'm lazy, no, it's not an accelerometer, but it's a gyroscope. Oh, gyroscope. And instead of returning 2, let's just have it return 3. Okay, so now I have the basics up and running down here. And now I can basically use it in my robot service. So let's go into the robot service and just create a constructor. Robot service. Let's say that we want to have iSensor as, iSensor sensor as an input to the constructor. So basically I just have to reference the project dependency injection sample.sensors and then import it. So I actually don't know if this is resharper doing this for me, but if I did not have resharper, I would right click add project reference, click on the project I want to reference, okay, and then basically just import it afterwards like this. Okay, then I'm just going to add or create a property that contains the, and it already has it. It's so smart it knows what I want to do. So I want to have a private read-only robot service. That's robot service exact. No, that's not what I want to do. I don't know why I said that. It's an iSense I want, and it's my sensor. Yes, so I'm just gonna instantiate it down here. Then once I have gotten it injected through the constructor, the service. And this is where the dependency injection comes in. So instead of having it created down here with something like new and some sensor, and it could be an accelerometer, instead of doing this, we basically just have something else create the object and then inject it into the constructor. So now I'm just going to create just a very, very simple function just to show you something regarding the methods or the sensor classes. So I'm just going to have a console write line. And let's say, oh, whoops, let's just do it like this. So the sensor with name, and then we're just going to insert the name with name, whatever it is, then has the following value we could add. Has the following value, and then we can just add the value. So we knew that we had the method read sensor value. Okay, and that's basically it. So now we just need to run this one, this robot down here. But in order to do that, we must first have something create the services. I'm just going to go ahead and install the NuGet package. Right-click the project, manage NuGet packages, and then I'm just going to browse for dependency injection. So it should probably come as one of the first ones up here. Yeah, Microsoft Extensions, dependency injection. Just going to go ahead and install it, click OK, and then I actually need another package right now. So it's the Microsoft.extensions.hosting. It's going to make sense why I have to use this also just in 2 seconds. But it's basically just, well, not just, but it's a library for hosting and startup infrastructure for applications. And that's something we also need. So I'm just going to click OK. So now they're both installed. And what we now need to do is basically first create a host. So the host is responsible for building the application and configuring all the services and stuff like that. So I'm just going to create a default builder. I'm going to configure my services. I'm going to input something here for later, but I'm just going to have it create an error for now until I just create a function down here. So I'm just going to create a function for configuring my services. And the input is an iService collection. So it's an interface with the service collection. I'm just going to call this one service collection. So it autocompletes to services, but I always prefer to have it called service collection, so I always know what it actually is. So this function, I basically want it just to be called up here. And I can now add my different services. So I'm just going to add service collection.add a singleton. And there are different types of services. So there's the singleton, the scope, the transient, and whatever. But I'm just going to add the singleton for now. I'm going to add the robot as a robot service, as a singleton. Just going to import it. And then I'm going to add one of my sensors as a transient. I'm going to add the, let's say I want to add the iSensor interface, and the implementation is the accelerometer. Okay. And that's basically it. Now I at least have configured the services that are added to the collection. What I now want to do is say, okay, I need a robot, an instance of the robot. So I'm just going to have the host created for me. So I'm just going to go into services, the iService provider, and then go for the get required service. Okay, what I need is an iSensor. Oh, sorry, I'm just in both. What I need is the robot service. Sorry about that confusion. And then afterwards, I just want to go ahead, the robot.print sensor value, And then it should probably print something saying that the accelerometer or the sensor is an accelerometer and the value is 2, if I remember correctly. But let's run the code and see. Oh, and it appeared on the screen. Yes, exactly as I expected. The sensor with name accelerometer has the following value 2. So I can now just easily down here switch it out with gyroscope, and then it should also work. But just to say gyroscope instead, and probably that the value is 3, I think. Yeah, exactly as expected. So that's basically it. We have now added dependency injection. The service provider takes care of getting providing us with the robot service, and then the dependency injection basically takes care of creating the objects and providing the dependencies out to the services. As you can see, we don't state anywhere around here that we need to create the eye sensor. It's basically created behind the scenes and then provided to the robot. Okay, so that was it for the first part of this tutorial. I hope that you enjoyed the first part of this tutorial. I will upload another video with the last 2 parts. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe if you would like to see more videos like this in the future. Thank you.